Welcome to the Board of Education's February 5th work session. Please stand as we observe a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Ms. Owen. Please face the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I continue with announcements, I just want to take a moment and express our deepest sympathies to Mr. McMillan's friends and family. Everyone has certainly felt Mike's absence due to his illness over the last several months, and his passing on January 26th is especially felt and mourned this evening. Mike was our longest-serving current board member and a friend and colleague to each of us, and he will certainly be missed, not only at board meetings and school events, but by all those in his district that he served and represented. We ask that you keep his family, friends, and community in your thoughts and prayers. And I just want to say several of us were at his funeral on Friday afternoon, and you know, a lot of times we hear celebration of life and celebration of life services, and I truly think that that service was a true celebration of life. We heard so many stories from Mike's friends going back to when he was a little boy to current, so it was truly a celebration. He will be missed. Board members, as you remember, our strategic planning committee was scheduled to meet during the week of the snow, but it was rescheduled for tomorrow, February 6th at 1 p.m. in the boardroom. I know we're looking forward to our initial committee meeting. Also, several of us will be attending the TSBA Legislative and Legal Institute that will be held in Franklin, Tennessee on February 12th and 13th. So we're looking forward to speaking with our state legislators at the event and also at our annual luncheon on Friday, February 16th, and that'll be at 12 o'clock at Bridgewater Place. And just again, as a reminder, thank you to everyone who is in attendance tonight. Please remember that this is the board's public business meeting to discuss items that come before us. So we just ask that you be respectful and courteous at times. Just be mindful that sound carries, so if you need to take a phone conversation or talk to a friend or a neighbor, just take those conversations out so everyone can hear. Are there any requested changes to this meeting agenda? All right, motion by Ms. Horn, second by Mr. Watson. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Dr. Reiswick, do you have a report tonight?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Before my report, I too want to take a moment to recognize Mike McMillan and his countless years of service to our students, our schools, and our community. Mr. McMillan dedicated nearly a quarter of a century to public service as a teacher, county commissioner, and as a representative of this board, and he will be missed. As a board member, he was always there for District 8. He attended every graduation, followed every sporting event. He recognized his students for their achievements, and regardless of his politics, he always did what he believed was right for kids and for his community. Mr. McMillan led with wisdom and conviction, and I appreciate the opportunity to have worked with him and the difference that he made in the lives of the students he served. I, too, as Ms. Henderson said, invite everyone to join me in keeping Mr. McMillan's family in your thoughts and prayers. As I move into my report tonight, I want to begin not with an update, but with a reflection. Reflecting on the last 18 months I've spent in this seat, I can't help but think back to a moment at Fulton almost 15 years ago. As a new administrator, we contracted with an outside organization to conduct focus groups with our students, specifically to find out what our students needed from the adults in the building. In their interviews, students shared with us they weren't being pushed hard enough in their classes. These were high school juniors, and they knew what they were capable of more. They just needed their teachers to set higher goals and to challenge them, and that's exactly what we did. We raised the bar. We set ambitious goals. We opened more AP classes and more dual enrollment classes. We experienced excellence with our students as they rose to meet the challenge. When I started at Fulton, our graduation rate was 43.6%, and in 3 years, we nearly doubled that to 81%. We graduated our first National Merit semifinalist in the school's history. Student daily attendance improved, and our number of suspensions were cut in half. The lessons I learned at Fulton have remained with me. Students will rise to the expectations adults set for them. Student confidence soars when they taste academic success. When kids are bought in, they feel their strong connection and sense of belonging to their school. They know their teachers and administrators believe in them because they're held to high expectations and they rise to meet those challenges. I saw this same timeless lesson in action last Thursday on a visit to Central High School when the 865 Academies and the CEO champions went to meet there. During that visit, we received a report on the progress Central is making a year and a half into this initiative. They're seeing a 24% decrease in discipline referrals. Attendance is up 2.5% in their freshman academy. Their fail rate in Algebra 1, which is one of our foundational skills we're looking at, is down 25%. And they're seeing a 6% decrease in the number of students with D's and F's. We heard similar results a few weeks ago at South Doyle High School with their freshman academy as they reflected on the work they're doing there. At KCS, across every grade band, we've gone back to the basics, and it's making a difference. We're focused on our 4 priorities, and it's paying off. Our third grade reading proficiency is the highest it's ever been, 33.5%. After just 1 year of regionalized support for schools, we saw gains in every state-tested area. As of 2 weeks ago, we've launched 865 academies in every one of our 14 traditional high schools. We're implementing a 5-year plan to increase student outcomes in Region 5, and we're building a 5-year plan to improve special education services throughout the district. And we're nowhere close to being finished yet. As superintendent, my job is to remain focused on improving student outcomes and preparing the next generation for success. I know the stakes are high. We're talking about teaching kids to read fluently by 3rd grade, to be able to perform Algebra 1 proficiently by 9th grade. And we're talking about college visits, job shadowing, industry internships, and preparing students for the rest of their lives. And we're talking about success for every student in Knox County. And I'm not willing to waste a single minute with these stakes being this high. I'm committed to continuing to invest in great educators in every school because our great educators are the ones who are raising expectations for every student every day. They're the ones increasing the student outcomes and preparing the next generation in Knox County. As you know, I visit a school at least once a week to spend time with students, administrators, and staff. What you may not know is I also spend half a day teaching 5 to 6 times a year in our classrooms. I always try to pick at least one school in every region, so I get a good feel for what's going on there. Last week, I had the privilege of teaching 3rd grade at East Knox Elementary with Miss Hillary Montgomery. While I was there, I witnessed high expectations in action and the impact of those expectations on student learning. Ms. Montgomery is one of our educators who chose to complete her literacy specialist certification through UT. This was a program we funded using ESSER dollars. Sitting in Ms. Montgomery's class and listening to her plan with her peers, I could see the influence of that program and her passion of her instruction in the classroom. And that's really what this is all about. On a similar note, I had the opportunity to spend time with another group of educators last week. I met with our teaching representatives for KCEA, who, as you know, are our collaborative conferencing partner. I want to thank my friend Paula Hancock for having me come out to speak. We spent time discussing the important work taking place in classrooms across the county. I answered questions about our new math and English curriculum materials, and I left that meeting feeling encouraged by our shared focus on, you guessed it, our 4 core priorities. Finally, I want to end my report this evening by saying how excited I am to congratulate the 172 teachers we're recognizing tonight for earning their tenure. As you just heard, we're making progress, and it's because of the hard work and dedication of our countless great educators like these, soon-to-be tenured teachers that we're recognizing on Thursday. I look forward to continuing to update you on this work and continuing improvement outcomes for the students. Madam Chair, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Reiswick. That was a great report. And, I just want to thank you again for your leadership. We have seen such great gains in student outcomes, and it's because we've focused on the 4 priorities and making sure that every student has an excellent education and they're set up for success. So thank you for that. Okay, next on our agenda, the Newcomer Academy project update. Is that you, Mr. Myers? Oh, hello. How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Good. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It is a pleasure. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, for allowing me this opportunity to give you the project update for the Newcomer Academy.
Awesome.
In KCS.
Hey, can I interrupt real quick?
Oh, yes.
I just want to make sure we introduce Alicia. Miss
Yeah,
Jones,
yeah,
you want to
that'd
do
be
that real quick, Jason? I know you're great, and I know you're ready to go, but I want to make sure everybody knows that.
Yeah, I think we take
Okay.
for granted we all
Thank
know
you.
each other, but that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roswick, Madam Chair. Yeah, so as we enter into continuing our work toward launching the Newcomer Center, we felt it appropriate to give you all a robust update, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity for Alicia Jones, our Director of Student Supports, to be able to interface with the board a little bit tonight. Plus, you've got to be tired of hearing from me at this point, so.
Welcome again, Alicia.
Thank you. So in KCS, we currently support over 5,200 ELL students, and in that, we have families who speak more than 123 different languages. And a part of this community, we also have 121 SIFE students that we currently serve in the district. And SIFE means these students have interrupted formal education. And so we anticipate the ELL numbers as well as the SIFE enrollment to continue to increase. And so with the Newcomer Academy, we are centralizing all of our resources to be able to prepare these students for success in and beyond the classroom. Our Newcomer Academy, it aligns with the KCS priorities, success for every student. In the Newcomer Academy, we will provide access to our Tennessee grade level standards as well as our English language proficiency standards and have trauma-informed practices. The Newcomer Academy will provide a pathway for graduation for students who come to KCS with little to no credits when they enroll, and the target student population are 16 to 17-year-old students. We want to give these students the opportunity to a high-quality academic learning environment that will meet their unique needs. They're diverse ELL students who are at the beginning of their ELL proficiency standards, and we just said that they do have this interrupted formal education, so we do want to target the beginning level students. So how will they qualify for enrollment? The Newcomer Academy, it will be a voluntary program through which each student will have an individualized learning plan. All of our ELL students in the district have an individual learning plan. We call those ILPs. And in the ILP documents, it describes the academic and language needs for each individual student. It is individualized, and we do provide goals. We meet as a team. Schools continue to monitor their progress, and so that will remain the same for the Newcomer Academy. These students, when they enroll, we are looking for students who are coming in with WIDA scores at level 1, which means that they are entering on that language proficiency level. We want students who are refugees or asylees, students who come into the U.S. that have not been here more than 24 months. And again, students who are not earning credits towards graduation or have few credits earned towards graduation. When these students come in, we will continue to monitor their individual learning plans to determine progress and exit criteria. In providing these centralized services, we want to give a non-traditional structure while also giving the additional supports that SIFE students require. That means culturally responsive school culture. That means helping students acclimate to a new school, United States, new environment, addressing the specific behavior needs or needs for students may come in with trauma. And so having that wraparound model, wraparound services to support the students and the families, and then also having the specialized newcomer instructional materials. And so with that, we want to provide extra literacy and numeracy support for those students who have the limited educational background. Best practices says that newcomers and students who have interrupted formal education thrive with a sheltered instructional model. And that just means that the instructional approach is where students are provided physical activities, visual aids, It's an environment to teach them vocabulary necessary to understand content subjects while still delivering the language-rich grade-level content instruction in English, but also making it comprehensible for the level 1 access for WIDA. And so still continuing to engage families and engaging the community as well. That is a part of this instructional model, ensuring that they are able to thrive in and out of school. So in terms of exit, again, that ILP, individual learning plan, is at the forefront. We are continuously monitoring that ILP. We want to look at students who have been enrolled in the program. If they are scoring at least a 2.1 or higher during that first year of enrollment, then we will consider them for exit. We do not want any student to stay in the program longer than 2 years. Students can transition to Paul Kelly Volunteer Academy. We want students to have that profile to be able to make a smooth transition into Paul Kelly. And of course, if we have a parent request, we will honor that request to examine that student for exiting the program. Then a very quick construction update. The Newcomer Academy will be housed at the Paul Kelly Volunteer Academy on the Lincoln Park campus, and it is still scheduled to open September 2024. Once renovations are complete, we will have 7 classrooms that will be able to serve up to 156 students. And as of today, most of the interior demolition is largely complete. The picture that you see here, it is our elevator shaft that is in progress right now. All of the electrical, mechanical, plumbing, all of those things are proceeding at this moment. So we're very excited about the work that has taken place thus far, and things are coming along well. We will have a budget impact, but before I get into that, I do want to say that we have done a very deep dive into how can we open with the least amount of budget impact as possible. And so we are going to look at a 50 max of student enrollment during the first year of opening. We will utilize and share some of the Paul Kelly staff, Paul Kelly Academy staff. We've looked at technology needs, and we've been able to make purchases with ESSER dollars to secure those funds now. We've also collaborated with the transportation department so that we do not incur any additional costs with transportation. Our students will be able to ride the buses with the Paul Kelly students, and so we will not have a budgetary impact there. In order to staff the Newcomer Academy, we will need teachers and support staff, and that is the budget impact that you see before you. And now I am very excited to introduce the principal of the Newcomer Academy. Dr. Faulkner will come at this time and give a brief word.
Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Dr. J.D. Faulkner. Currently, I'm the principal of Paul Kelly Volunteer Academy, and I have the honor and pleasure of being the founding principal of the Newcomer Academy come September. I look at this, I came to Knox County in 2013, and as a public educator for over 20 years, even as an adult, it's very, you're nervous, right? Coming to a new district to open a new school, open Career Magnet Academy in 2013, and that comes with some nerves and some fears, right, of wanting to do the best job you can do. Those nerves and fears do not compare to the nerves and the fear that 16 and 17-year-old SIFE students have. These are students who have an interrupted formal education, and I could not imagine, being a parent of 4 teenagers myself, how that feels to a family, but how that feels to a 16 and 17-year-old student as well, especially one who may come to us speaking one of 123 different languages. So I look at this as a way to make sure that we ensure success for every single student. But at the core of this is creating a culture and environment where these students feel safe and secure, and we can make sure that as they progress through high school, that they're going to be successful and be contributing members of our Knox County community. So I just want to say thank you for entrusting that in me. I look forward to working with each and every one of you all. I look forward to working with Ms. Jones and the staff at Paul Kelly Volunteer Academy. And I can assure you that as this moves forward, this is truly what is best and really encompasses success for every student. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Board members, do we have any questions or discussion? Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Jones, and thank you, Dr. Faulkner. I've actually got several questions. One is just a technical one. Dr. Faulkner, will you remain principal of Paul Kelly as well? Will you serve in both capacities?
So I will be serving as a principal of Paul Kelly Volunteer Academy, as well as overseeing as the principal duties as the newcomer academy as well.
It's a good thing they're both located on the same campus.
It is very, I'm going to get my steps in, I can tell you, most definitely.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you all for the update. I'm really, really excited about the Newcomers Academy. One of my questions is, some folks who have been around for a while are familiar with the Welcome Center. Can you talk to us about how the Newcomer Academy either supplants or supplements the work of the Welcome Center? Like, how do those work together?
So the Newcomer Academy actually will be housed right in the same
Right.
exact building.
Yeah.
And so they will have access to our family community liaisons, the same access as every other student who's entering the district. And so what that means is that if there are any language needs, they will have on-site staff available. So they will have the same access.
So can you, just for people who aren't familiar as much with the Welcome Center, can you talk about how this builds on that work? Like the differentiation between the two? Yeah.
So in terms of when students enroll in the district,
Yeah.
and they can either enroll at the Welcome Center or at their base school.
Yep.
If they come to the Welcome Center, then they do have access to, if there are any language barriers, they do have access to the different 123 languages that we said.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are not able to provide that, we do have contracted vendors but we typically can support every single language that comes. They will walk them through the entire enrollment process, help them fill out paperwork, give them information for community partners, to access different resources. If there are any health needs, they, give coordination of services to be able to have those wraparound services.
Right. Thank you. And then you mentioned wraparound services several times in the presentation, and you just mentioned it again. Who are some of the partners that we're engaging with for the wraparound services for the Newcomers Academy? Are there any external partners that we're engaging with?
For the Newcomer Academy specifically, that's still in the works.
Okay.
So I don't want to give very specific names.
Sure. No, that's fine.
They will have access to our nursing health services. We do work very closely with the health department. We work with Central Hispano. So we will continue the partnerships there.
Mm-hmm.
But very specifically, we are still working on that.
Thank you. And you mentioned the budget impact around staffing, and you gave a total of about $1 million. And you mentioned 50 students in the first year.
Yes.
Roughly how many teachers is that and support staff, like numbers?
And so roughly that is about 11 teachers.
Okay.
But we are sharing some of those positions with
Okay.
Paul Kelly, so those are not necessarily all standalone.
Sure.
In terms of like the nurse,
Yeah.
they're very specific, like the custodian, there are others positions
So
that will
11
be
includes the
shared.
teachers and the support staff?
Correct.
Okay. And then when we are maxed out at 156 kids, I think is what you mentioned, do we anticipate do we have a rough idea of how many staff it would take at that point?
We do not want to max out. We really want to, our max is 110. We don't want to max out at 156.
Okay.
We feel comfortable with
156 is an
110.
occupancy max
Yes.
out. Okay, it's
Yes.
not a service. I got you.
Yes.
So at 110, where do we think it'll be?
Let me get you that. Hold on 1 second. I actually have it. So that I don't make everybody wait. I may get you that.
You're
I
okay.
do
It's
have
fine
it,
to
though.
send to us. I'm just.
Yes,
yeah.
I will send that to you. I do have it.
Yeah, I really appreciate the fact that we're staggering the start, right, and starting small and then kind of growing it. I just kind of want to better understand the longer term impact when it's more at scale. So
I do not have the exact
That's okay.
staffing number right offhand, but I will get that to you.
That's okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. You answered some of my questions I had. Ms. Christie?
I don't really have any questions, just want to comment if anyone hasn't been out to the Welcome Center or Paul Kelly recently, just a lot of really exciting things are happening there. I mean, I know we talk about the Paul Kelly and helping kids graduate, but a lot of intentional work that kind of ties into the mission with the 865 academies. And, you know, I've talked to JD about this, and just very intentional planning on helping these kids not only graduate, but have a plan post-graduation. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I went out, I think a couple of us went out to tour Paul Kelly maybe a year or two ago, and it's amazing the work that you guys are doing out there for the kids. So thank you, and I'm excited for this work and to just see a bigger impact for those kids. So we really appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on with the agenda. Dr. Reiswick, do you have a custodial? I know Dr. Adams is out tonight, so I didn't know if you had a custodial update.
Thank you, Ms. Henderson. I'm actually going to have Ms. Himmelgarn give that.
Okay.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I do have Dr. Adams' custodial update. We are down just a little bit from his last update to 65 custodial vacancies and down to only 6 of our schools that have 50% or more of their positions open.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Triplett, we have a legislative update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple things. I would just challenge everybody to read those TSBA legislative notes. They talk about what's coming up in the next week and being reviewed. There's not a ton that's specifically related to our legislative priorities or things we would kind of as a group speak about, but certainly things you may be interested in just to kind of know what's going on. There's obviously the bill that Ms. Owen sent out related to AI and kind of the need for a policy around that, and then several bills related to school security, and of course we'll discuss tonight that Education Freedom Scholarship Act and some of those things that are going on. So just challenge everyone to kind of stay up to date on that. That changes obviously weekly about what is being discussed. But other than that, that is my report.
Awesome. Thanks, Mr. Triplett. Before we get into our discussion of our regular session agenda, board members, you received information over email, but for the public's information, items 8E, 9D, and 10D were added to the agenda after it was published last Wednesday. Those items are time sensitive, and we can have a discussion on those this evening, but I just wanted to make sure that the public and everyone was aware that those items were added. So with that, we will move into our regular agenda. Start with 6A or B. Okay. C, 1, 2, or 3. Four or 5. Item 6 or 7.
It's not working.
Oh, no.
Sorry. I wasn't hitting the right button. Thank you, Madam Chair. So sorry. Do we have proof of funds on this? Do they have the funds available for the halls? Let's see, I think it's halls purchase. Yes. On 6,
Which one's that again?
8, or actually, I think it's
Is it
6,
C?
8. C8, I'm sorry.
Oh, C8. Oh, okay, gotcha.
6C8. Do we know if the funds are available? I didn't see it, but. Is Keith here? Yeah, Keith.
I'm sorry, I actually don't own this item, but I do remember talking about it in board preparation, and I asked Garfield the same question. My understanding is that they do have the funds and that's intact. Of course, he'll be here on Wednesday and could probably confirm. Here comes Ron, and he may have the answer to that.
Oh, good timing, Ron.
He's swinging in, so I'm assuming he's here for a purpose. Here we go.
What did I miss?
He may not know. Ron, I was asking, do we have proof that Halls has the funds for the purchase that's C8?
It should be, because normally that flows through Garrett's department. I will verify that, though.
Thank you.
I think that they were sent. through.
Terry
Yeah,
has the
I believe so.
Yes.
Terry is the
Thank
knows
you,
all.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, I was just copied on an email to Dr. Adams, and unfortunately, he's not here tonight, but the school did send proof of funds
Okay.
to him. It wasn't to us in time for it to be published with the agenda, but we can get that to board members if we
Okay,
need
that's
to.
fine. Thank you. As long as you have it.
Yeah, well, when in doubt, always, if you don't know the answer, Terry will normally have it.
Yeah. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know I did not get a chance to go to the executive meeting, and part of this was discussed there, so maybe it's intentional. Did we skip item 5 on purpose? You didn't ask
No.
about,
Oh, no, I'm so sorry, Mr. Watson. We can go back to that.
okay,
That was my fault.
thank you.
Yes, thank you for that.
Thank you. Can I go ahead and ask my
Yes,
question then?
yes, thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Okay, great. So the $12 million fund balance designation, I've read the material. I know what it's about. Can somebody just briefly summarize what the 3 components are for that? And then I've got just a couple questions for Mr. McPherson.
Jennifer, Ms. Himmelgarn.
Madam Chair, Mr. Watson, members of the board, there was a suggestion, you'll notice too that it's a different spot on the agenda. There was a suggestion to move the fund balance designations to at the beginning of the agenda because sometimes they contain dollars that the board is obligating in later agenda items. So the $12 million is made up of 3 different categories of funds. One would be a Hardin Valley Academy addition, and that is $2 million, and that is one that is voted on later in the agenda. The Farragut solution, $3 million, and that Dr. Adams referenced that in his January presentation that we would be returning to ask for a $3 million fund balance designation, and the remainder, $7 million, is for Title IX compliance issues across the district.
Thank you, Ms. Himmelgarn. And the $2 million additional for Hardin Valley is due to simply an increase in cost, correct?
That is correct. The budgeted amount, I believe, is $9.4 million, and the cost is $11.4.
So we had already
difference of
approved that
those-
work. It's just costing us more than what we anticipated at the time we approved it.
Yes.
Correct. And then the $3 million, as you mentioned, Dr. Garfield's briefed us on that, and then the Title IX with the 7. Mr. McPherson, can you speak to us a little bit about, for those who don't know in the public, this fund balance thing? I wish I had a bunch of money sitting in a fund balance somewhere personally. What that means and how it works and what our requirement is from a state, and then if you have any numbers relative to where we are in fund balance and how much this will eat out of it.
Yes, sir, Mr. Watson. So fund balance, if you kind of think of it in your personal finances, would be somewhat akin to your savings account, right? So ultimately, what it just simply boils down to each year is if you, and I'm simplifying this and I'm trying to get away from governmental terms, but what it boils down to is if you collect more revenue than you spend, right, you get more in than you take out, those dollars close into what we call fund balance, right? The state requires us to, all districts, to keep about 3%, it's 3% of your operating budget in fund balance, right? So for us, that probably translates to 20 million, 21 million, something like that. Now, the state will allow us to, and currently, when we closed fiscal year in, from June 30, we had around 91 million. Now, that was the amount that was available, but keep in mind, 20-some-odd million of that is that 3% state requirement.
Right.
The state will allow districts to use that. So it's not like you can't spend your own money. If you dip into that, the dilemma is, and we're not even close to dipping into that, right? The dilemma would be, and several years ago, I can say we probably were close. That was 4 or 5 years ago. So if you do dip into that, then the following year you would simply have to budget that back into your budget, which could be problematic, obviously, because you would have to budget amounts unspent. We're not there.
If you dip into it at all, or if you dip into it and it goes below the 3%?
If it goes below the 3%.
I just want to make sure, yeah.
Yep. And so those are the requirements, right, for fund balance. And so just again, to keep it, try to keep it as simplistic as possible. It's just revenue that you collect over and above what you spend, exclusive of anything that you would have to book into a payable or a liability or a reserve account. Like, for instance, we have outstanding encumbrances at the end of the year. You're contractually obligated on those POs, and so you have to book that on the books.
Yeah. So I know the numbers I'm about to say aren't exact, but in rough terms, we had around 91 million. We have to keep 20 million. If we spend 12 million, then we have 58 left in addition to the 3% that we've got to retain. Correct?
Correct.
And why at times would the school system ask for fund balance designations for things like this versus paying it out of operating or whatever?
Well, that's a good question. So operating, what we try to do is those would be typically what you think of as recurring expenditures, right? Which would be, payroll, anything you've contracted with for services, supplies and materials, things like that. So when it comes to something like this, there's just not an approved budgetary item with what the board approved in operating. Right. So essentially, I think you probably could say you're paying it out of operating, but you're paying it not within the budget. You're paying within those available funds that you have on hand.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Ms. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just need some clarification. I'm a little confused. On the Farragut solution, I thought what we were told in January was that we would be coming back to hear and approve the plan. So am I just confused on that? Were we just coming back to approve the money?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Ms. Owen. And my understanding is the plan was already in the approved capital dollars. So as far as the action to what we're building was letting the board know that. The plan for the conversion of the primary and the intermediate schools would require fund balance in order for that to happen. So if you all didn't want to do the $3 million for the renovation, then it would default to remain a primary and intermediate. I wish Garfield was here to explain that more, but that's my understanding. So I think Mr.
So
Duke
we
will
approved the renovation as part of, I could have sworn what we were told is that we were going to approve the new school now, approve the new school now, and then we would come back around to talk about the renovations.
I think you're correct. I think that's what this is. I think the funding would be the approval of the renovations. If the board didn't want to approve that, then they just wouldn't approve that part of the fund balance, and it would remain intermediate and primary.
So if we approve this, we are approving the plan for the intermediate and primary?
That will be my understanding. And so Ms. Hemwarm was explaining that too. Because there were 3 items on the agenda that were all set up to be, you don't want to approve the contracts before you approve the dollars. It was all put on the front to see it and then to be discussed as the 3 items that are in there. But if the funding, if the board doesn't want to approve the funding, that's okay for that. And say that would be in essence my understanding of saying we want to leave the 2 schools as they are.
I think it would make more sense for me and be more transparent to the public when we approve things like this, if we could see the plan and the money together and approve those things together instead of having it all rolled in with other things. Because having this in with another fund balance designation, it's unclear that we are approving that plan. And it's unclear to me, I think it just doesn't make it clear that this is part of approving a plan. It looks like we're just approving the money.
I get what you're saying. So I think I understand what you're saying. So like the Hardin Valley item is on there. The other item for the $7 million, the Title IX is on there.
But
you're
the
saying
plan isn't there.
Right. You're saying an item that shows the Farragut plan for that to be listed on this, and then you all would know, instead of just approving the funds, you'd be approving the plan with the funding for it.
Right.
I mean, that makes sense to me.
Like when we approved the school, we approved the plan,
right,
but we didn't approve the funding.
Right. So we could.
Which is also problematic, I think.
So technically, we would be adding, I think what I hear you saying is, because the other 2 items are on there listed as separate items, but the Farragut plan is not. So adding the Farragut plan to convert the 2 schools with those dollars would then be a separate item. I think I think I understand what you're saying. The idea was just to load that at the front so everybody would see all the fund balance of what that is. But there is not an item that says the Farragut primary, the $3 million for the conversion. And I think that makes sense what you're saying. That should probably be an added item to the agenda to be voted separately if it is. I think it makes sense if that's what you're saying to me.
It is, thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This matches my understanding of what we did last month, because last month, since we already had the funding for a new school in the capital budget, which we had already approved funding for a new school, so we didn't need to approve that. So we didn't approve anything last month. We just saw the plan. And then this is completely in addition to that. So it's a fund balance. But this does, we do have, in order to make that plan work, we do have to approve this. Because if we don't approve this, then that plan does not work. Because that plan is, what makes that plan work is to use these funds to renovate 2 schools so that they are both K-5 schools, because they are not right now. So if we don't approve this, then the plan doesn't work. So, I mean, to me, it's clear, because it's clear to me, but that's just what everybody needs to understand. And since Garfield's not here, but that's the thing. If we don't approve the $3 million fund balance, we don't have the money to renovate, which we need in order to make the plan work.
Mr. Watson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Riswick. I think some of the challenge is not about what the right approach is, it's just having the consistent approach in terms of how we're approving it. You know, you sent out an email to the board earlier in the week, or maybe even last week, about the chicken and the egg, right? And Ms. Himmelgarn talked about that, and I do think it's important that we're thinking about money at the same time. So the question is, consistently, when we're approving these type of capital things, Ms. Owen just proposed that we're looking at the plan and the money at the same time, right? Is it the same decision? Is it 2 separate decisions? And then what decision is first? And what we don't have in this agenda is consistency in terms of how it's being presented. And that's all I would ask for, is that every time we're making a capital decision that we're doing. I get that if you're approving the money, you are by default approving a plan, but I don't know legally, do you have to approve a plan separate than the funding? Can they approve together? I don't know the answer to that question. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
I mean, it makes sense. Again, I think both of what you're saying brings clarity to it.
Yeah.
I think the thought was, the money, the buildings are already built. Right. Renovations for that. But, I mean, if the board wants to add an agenda item to vote on it for that reason, I think we could do that. I mean, I understand what you all are saying about the clarity.
Well, and I think what I'm hearing you say is that in your mind, even though, to Ms. Horn's point, if we don't renovate this, we can't do the other thing. But in your mind, it sounds like they're uncoupled, that this is a renovation project, which has a different process for approval than building a new school, which is a very different thing, correct? Even though they're tied together, but.
No, I think you're right. We could build the one school. The last decision that we heard from the community that we brought to you guys was they preferred the K-5s. And so when we talked about that would cost the $3 million to convert those 2 schools to that. Technically we could open the elementary school and leave the 2 as they are, but it would change some of the zoning or potential of how, what we do capacity-wise on that. This plan does that full thing. Again, I do understand that we could have an item on there specifically for the conversion. It would make sense. Yeah,
I guess my point is that decision to build a school happened some time ago, and this is essentially a modified plan that has 2 components. It's now building a new school and a renovation. So, and maybe we should, again, I don't know legally if we have to approve the renovation or if we can just approve the funds. So.
Go on, and then.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, I mean, you're right, Mr. Watson. I mean, so in general, the board has to do both, has to, approve a contract for, an architect, approve a contract for a contractor. So, I mean, one way or another, the board's going to have to approve the actual building of whatever is in the capital plan, right? And then, of course, usually the board, approves of a budget, a capital budget. So if it's not in that capital budget, then the money has to be approved some other way. So that was the reason for the fund balance designation. And I know that there was a conversation, at the last meeting with Ms. Henderson and Dr. Ryswick and the staff about, what about moving this fund balance on the agenda so that the board wouldn't be agreeing to a project without any funding, right? But then again, you get into the chicken and the egg type of thing. One or the other has to come first, but at the end of the day, you have to have both to continue the project. And from what I've heard and what I've seen, certainly, an elementary school for Farragut had been approved in the budget, over a couple different years prior to now. But certainly the new component was the remodeling of the other schools. So, yeah.
Ms. Christie, then Ms. Warren. Oh, no. Ms. Warren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think it's clear on here what this $3 million is for, to renovate the schools. So I guess my question is the concern that when we get around to renovating the schools, that if we look back to see where the board approved that it will be hard to find that?
My concern is that often when we're told that we are going to see something later for a vote, what we actually see is a very different format, and it's confusing to the public. So what we were told in January is we are going to approve this part of the plan, and then you'll see the rest of the plan for approval later. But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing the money. So that's a lack of consistency, like Daniel said, that is confusing for everybody, and it creates a lack of trust in the community when they can't figure out what it is that we're approving. If we say we're going to approve a plan, but then later we approve money, and they can't see how it's connected to the plan. They can't see that we have approved a plan.
Well, to me, this is what we said we were doing in January, because we don't have architecture plans yet, because we're not to that stage. So to me, I thought we were approving the funds, which meant we're approving that we're going to plan toward the renovation. So to me, this is what we talked about. So,
Don't we usually have an estimate of what it's going to cost? Shouldn't that
per
be part of
building
the
or
plan?
Well,
Shouldn't
I think
plan
the $3
come
million
for the money.
Well, I think the $3 million is the estimate. I think that number came from Doug Shover's office. It came from somewhere. So I think that is the estimate. So that's what I'm assuming, that's the estimate.
I think if we saw that, if we could see that, where it came from, if we could see the plan that created that number, I think that would be much clearer.
I'm going to call Mr. Shover. Would you mind coming up and kind of explaining that and kind of clearing some things up? It's my understanding that Knox County procurement needs to know that the funds are approved before getting into the contract. Is that correct? Maybe you can clarify some of this.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Yes, when we came in January and we presented the findings of the public meetings and what we were recommending as the plan moving forward, it was the construction of a new elementary school, which was previously approved by the board, but coupled with that was the conversion of Farragut Primary and Farragut Intermediate into K-5 schools. What that requires is renovation of toilet rooms, as well as ultimately the removal of all the portable classrooms at those two schools. And so we were charged with putting together a rough estimate of what we believe that renovation cost is going to be. So we had a number for toilet rooms at Farragut Primary, Farragut Intermediate, and Farragut Middle School, and a total there of roughly $2 million. We've got one portable that is new enough that we feel like it's worth relocating. The cost to relocate and reuse that portable is going to be about $550,000. Again, this is an estimate. We've got 11 portables at the primary school and intermediate school that we would either demolish, or if we were lucky enough to find somebody that was interested in them, we could offset some of that cost. But assuming we were demolishing those, in conversations with one of our term bid contractors, They ballparked that number at about $60,000 apiece to take those down, remove the foundations, haul them off. That's a total of $660,000. So when you add that up, we're basically at $3 million. So that's where the $3 million number came from.
Thank you. Ms. Horn?
I would just point out that if you look back at the presentation that they gave us last month, it specifically says on next steps, request board approval to reclassify FPS and FIS as K-5 schools and request one-time fund balance designation of $3 million for renovations and portable removal at FPS, FIS, and FMS. So I think, that's why, to me, this is what I was expecting, so.
Ms. Owen?
Sorry, Madam Chair. So it's the approval of the reclassification. That's the part I'm not seeing anywhere. When did we vote on that? We didn't, and we're not now. So that's why people don't understand what we're doing, because at no point, it says that is a future piece, but it's not here.
Ms. Christie?
Can we add that to?
Yeah, let's just add it.
Add that to Thursday's agenda?
Probably.
Yeah,
Would that satisfy that?
So that we're saying we're reclassifying those two schools to K-5 schools. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And if I can clarify why, it's not anything against the project or anything. This is the only time there's ever been an opportunity to add it at the same time, because usually when this kind of thing comes up, it's months in the future or it's way out of scope of when it was actually discussed, sometimes even different board members by the time it's discussed again. And everybody said, oh yeah, y'all voted on that, we approved that a long time ago, when you can't go back and find how they were linked at all. So that's why I want to be sure, why we have this opportunity right here to look at all of this together, so that we can understand how confusing it is, especially when it's months apart. Thank you.
So we'll just get that added on the agenda. Mr. Watson, you're good? I saw your light on. Okay. So we did discuss 8, so now, it's been a while. We are now on item 9 or 10. Any discussion on those? 11 or 12 or 13. Okay, moving on to board policies. And these have been discussed in policy review. A or B? C or D? E or F? G or H? I or J? K or, yes, Ms. Bike.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a comment on K, and I am so sorry that I didn't previously catch this. Let's see. I believe it is line 4. The line 3 goes in the middle. The immune system produces antibodies to specific food or foods or substance. That just sounds very odd to me, and I wonder if we could do food with parentheses S or a substance or something like that. The wording is just really weird.
Yeah, it's a little wonky.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Oh, Mr. Myers, do you have any input to that? Sorry, I was looking at Gary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would have to confirm with Ms. Wagner, but I read that to imply that one could actually be allergic to one food, multiple types of food, or substances. But I can definitely go back and make sure that's the spirit of what Ms. Wagner intends.
Okay. Ms. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we're just really looking at some tense agreement, because the first time we have food or substances, and the second time we have foods or substance. So if we could just work that out somehow, that'd be great.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It's like 2 different ways on there. Okay. All right, moving on, L or M? N? O or P? Q or R? S or T? Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't actually have a question about a specific policy on here, but I do have a question about policy and action that we took between two meetings. Can I ask that? Okay, so at our last meeting in January, we had policy J210, harassment of students, on the agenda. And at that meeting, we took action to move that back to policy review. So I just think it's important for the public to know that we did do that. We did take it back to policy review, and we actually discussed it this month. I don't want people who are following this to look and say, whatever happened to that? They didn't bring it back up again. It just kind of went away. And then we also talked about, I may get the number wrong, is it G210 as well, which is the employee, G220? Yeah, G220, which is a similar policy built around our employees. And at this point, based upon that discussion, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, we decided to hold any potential action on that until we have a ninth member on our board through whatever action commission takes, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
great. Because we took action to push it, I wanted to make sure that the public understood what we did with it.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Thank you. Okay, moving on to grants, A or B, C or D, or E. And I actually would like to discuss E. Dr. Wilson, do you mind speaking to the spirit and kind of putting a spotlight on this? Because I think it's a really neat thing that we're doing, and I just wanted to highlight that. I know we had talked about it a week ago.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is kind of linked up. You'll see another contract on the board tonight for Thursday for approval, but opportunity to talk about that as well. So we are looking to make an amendment to the ESSER budget plan to look at the ability to do a district-wide literacy audit for our elementary schools. So that would include all 52 of our elementary schools and provide an opportunity to go in and look at practice, kind of do a snapshot, if you will. We've been engaged both with new curriculum for several years now, but in the time since Dr. Reiswick moved into office and the team as well have been about 18 months of really looking hard into our literacy practices. And so one of the nice things which we've done with ESSER dollars in lots of different ways is to take opportunity to go a little deeper and maybe try some different strategies. And so with this particular strategy, it will give us a district-wide sort of glimpse from a third party to come in and look at our practices and provide some reporting and feedback to each individual school, and then back to us at a regional level and a district level to be able to look at kind of where our implementation is and what our opportunities for growth would be in that for the future.
Thank you. Yep. I think a lot of times we see grants and contracts and, we kind of go through them, but I just wanted you to highlight that because we are doing some really cool things in the district that go along with the 4 priorities. So I appreciate you showing a spotlight on that. Thank you. Okay, moving on to contracts, 9A or B, C or D. Okay. Then moving on to regular agenda items, A, B, school calendar. Yes, Ms. Pike.
Thank you, Madam
Chair.
Chair.
Something on this one.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something on this one for everyone. I had emailed Keith, and he had a really great response, and I was wondering if he might mind to kind of explain your thought process and going through all of your decision-making for this.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Bike. Yeah, absolutely. So I think when we shared some communication on that, it was in relation to kind of what our options were for looking to buy back some instructional time into the school year, and then also to potentially add some opportunities should we encounter any additional inclement weather. And so really what was available to us in the schedule, we've tried to prioritize time as early as possible. And as mentioned last week and what's before the board tonight would be to do that through recouping those early release days. 3 of those days were remaining. Actually, we missed 1 in January from that last kind of bit of weather. But 3 of those could be turned back into 1 instructional day. And then our in-service day in February is one of those is also from one of those banked days that we have in our schedule. So being able to bring those back in as instructional time really was the option. When you look out into the calendar, we're kind of in a unique situation this year because it is a leap year. So that builds actually an extra holiday into the calendar for our staff because of how staff contracts work. That holiday, we typically see students out of school after the Easter holiday on that Monday following, but we've often had in-service staff development days on those days. That actually becomes an extra holiday in the calendar this year. And then also we try to work very closely with our election commission partners, and with it being a presidential primary this year, that's a really big day for folks coming to campus. And so while we generally try to keep students off campus on those days, March the 5th is again a day we're going to honor that, be off campus, and is actually an additional holiday for staff as well this year. So in terms of recuperating or bringing time back into the schedule, those two opportunities I mentioned through the early release and through the in-service day were really our best opportunities to do that. Outside of that, we have to look at either extending the school year or looking into days that we have allotted for spring break, which I think all of us agree are kind of not ideal. We know that's a challenge for families who have plans and things like that. And adding time to the end of the year while it checks a box in terms of the number of calendar days and things that we have to have. We know that the impact on students and outcomes is going to be less as we think about extending the year once we've moved past testing and it's end of the year parties and graduation has occurred and all those things. It's really hard to have the impact be as good if you have to push it out to the end.
Thank you. I have one more follow-up question on that. And so February 19th is our last teacher in-service day. I understand that, right?
Yep.
If we're going to make that an instructional day and then also get rid of the early release days, which are typically used for in-service type things as well, meetings, trainings, and whatnot, where will we kind of allot time for teachers and things like that to do some of that work without the kids?
Yeah, so again, the early release time, that's going to have to be an adjustment made on the part of the staff. We really put that, and I say on the staff, on the part of the school staff, we really charge them with being attentive to kind of what the needs at the school are. We this year went back and tried to listen to some of the feedback we got around early release last year and encouraged them to really try to use those opportunities for like extended PLCs, more time to dive into your data, things like that. So I could see them making some adjustments along either their own staff development days that they'll have remaining in the rest of the year, maybe even some staff meetings. There's different times that they could probably fold some of those types of collaborative opportunities back in. Again, that'll probably be a school by school decision depending on what they had planned for those times as to how they would fold it back in. With the in-service itself, I mean, that's a little bit harder to recover. But I would say, again, that our supervisors and our facilitators who really drive that learning are very plugged in through the regional support. While it won't be maybe as typical kind of sitting together and learning in that environment, they certainly can continue to push into whatever that next step and next piece for the professional development and support would be through those channels and doing that through the regional support with department chairs and assistant principals and coaches and folks like that.
One last follow-up question. Have you heard any feedback from any of the schools or regional directors about February 19th or anything like that being an issue for them or not preferring that?
No, I really have received very little feedback from folks on that. And I think early on, we tried to kind of, I think as we were looking for those opportunities, tried to warn our supervisors and folks that this might be an option that we were going to bring before the board. There is a lot of preparation that goes into those days. A lot of our teaching staff play crucial roles in helping to support leading sessions and sharing their knowledge on those days too. And so, again, that idea of kind of trying to be ahead of the decision as far as we could be to keep them from preparing for something that they wouldn't need to do otherwise or may not get to execute on was important to us too. So as we felt like this might be the plan moving forward, we just tried to keep that on everybody's radar, but I haven't heard a lot otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, moving on, item C. Ms. Owen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C is discussion and possible action on a resolution regarding school vouchers. I did not bring this in January because we were waiting for some actual language for a bill. And so I want to let you know what's in the packet that we're looking at. The first page of your packet is the resolution version that I'm suggesting. It is a combination of model language from TSBA, some language that we have had before, and some language from other districts that in some cases made the model language a little more user-friendly, I think. It made it a little easier for the public to understand. So I tried to combine those, and so that is my suggested version. The next page that you have is just TSBA's model resolution, and the red line is just where I filled in our district information. So it's TSBA's resolution, our district information filled in. I've made no other changes there. The third page you have is TSBA's just issue brief. It's just a little explainer. So this is not one of their priorities this time around, but this is an explainer to help board members understand vouchers. And the next page is where things get a little bit tricky. So I tried to wait for bill language, so I've been watching for that bill language to come out, and as soon as a bill dropped, of course, I downloaded it. And turns out that that was not supposed to happen. The bill wasn't supposed to be posted. So this bill, I've called it an early version. This bill number will not be the voucher bill number, so that's why there's a little red line through it. The number Senate Bill 2095 is completely different, has nothing to do with this at all. However, this is, there have been a couple of versions out there floating around, and this seems to be reasonable to what we can expect the bill to look like when it actually comes out. It's going to be in some caption bill somewhere. We don't know which caption bill. I have a lot of thoughts about transparency there, but we'll just hold on to those. So this is the closest I think we can reasonably expect, and it matches pretty much the discussion that I've heard from legislators. So I think that would be something useful for us just to take a look at and consider. I think all of the issues here are basically addressed in the resolution. So if they are there or not, I think as soon as the State of the State address happens, we will have a better idea of language. And so hopefully by Thursday, we'll be able to look and see if anything has changed in here, if there have been any accountability measures added, which right now there really aren't, or any other things like that. I guess, does anybody have any questions about any of that?
Ms. Pike.
Thank you. I kind of a question, comment. I saw TSBA's notifications about this, and I've briefly skimmed this, and I apologize if I missed anything, but is it worth noting that as it looks, at least with the first year of the vouchers as they're proposed, that anyone opting for them has to waive their right to any IDEA or any special education services or anything like that? Is that worth noting, or?
Are you saying worth noting in the resolution?
Yeah.
I think if that turns out to be in the language, yes. I think that's part of an accountability measure. So whether we want to pull that out separately, I'd be glad to add that if we want to.
Okay. I didn't know how much weight that might carry. If, especially if this is something that we did move forward on and we're going to send to them to ask for that accountability.
Anyone else? Any more discussion? Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And preparing for this meeting, I thought this would get a lot of conversation. So I didn't want it to skip me real quick when I was thinking about what I want to say. First, I know all of us come to this with very different kind of opinions, and I appreciate Ms. Owen doing work on this. Obviously, I don't think it's any surprise that not everyone on our board probably takes the same stance about being against vouchers or for vouchers. I'm certainly not against private schools. My wife started teaching in a private school. Thank you. My son went to kindergarten in a private school, and then we realized we couldn't afford it. So we made the switch to public school. I don't know if he would have continued to stay in there. I think my biggest concern with vouchers in terms of where we are currently within the state is the current voucher program was proposed as a pilot. That pilot's been running for less than 2 school years. And Dr. Reiswick, I'm sure you've run lots of pilots in your day, but typically you want to give a pilot time to succeed or fail and to learn from. And to, at this point, as a state legislature, to say, hey, we feel like we've learned enough, we're going to actually roll this thing out statewide, to me is very premature. I mean, I was in a presentation this last week, and some Tennessee Department of Education numbers were presented that actually said, at least up till now in the pilot, that on average, our kids who have used the ESSA voucher program in private school or in private schools, private ESSA voucher program, on average are seeing 19 percentage points less on average across TCAP math and ELA scores than public schools, which to me, there's a lot of questions about that. I don't know which groups they're comparing, and I would want to really dig into that number and kind of suss it out. But if it is what it says on the surface, that kids on average are performing at 19% lower percentage points if they're using a voucher, I mean, to me, I've got real questions about that. I think we as a school board need to consider in earnest Ms. Owens' proposal in terms of a statement. I mean, obviously, TSBA, which was already referenced earlier in this meeting, we look to them a lot for kind of guidance around legislation. They put together this. They also say that they oppose it. But we also know that there's other districts across the state who have already said that. I know all of us as board members will have reasons we are for it and reasons that we're not for it. To me, it's very premature to say, let's go statewide and do this when we don't really understand the ramifications for it. So.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Ms. Owen, Mr. Triplett.
I was just going to take any other questions, but if that's all, the last thing I would say about this is that as school board members who are talking about trying to pay our teachers more, pay our staff more, retain people, have more funding available, I think we really have to look at the grand scheme of things. And our legislators keep telling people that it's not coming from the same bucket of money, but the bottom line is that our tax dollars are a big bucket of money. And when you're taking out of that bucket, it's not going into our bucket. So that's the biggest thing that's concerning to me. It's not whether students might choose to leave our district, which could also be a huge chunk of money, but all of the funding that should be coming to our schools. If it's being held out for something else, then obviously that's impacting us. To say that it's not coming from TISA, that's either a really serious lack of understanding from those folks of how TISA works, or just not wanting to talk about the fact that they determine how much goes into TISA. TISA is a formula. TISA is not funding. So they are determining whether in the big bucket of money, part of it goes into TISA or part of it goes into vouchers. So it's really unreasonable to say that it wouldn't come from our funding. So anything that we are looking at that takes any kind of money, I think we have to realize that this takes from that. Long, long ago, when Tennessee was looking at desegregation. Were they going to fund 2 separate school systems, or were they going to fund 1 school system? Every state understood that funding 2 school systems doesn't work. There's not enough money to fund 2 school systems. So I think we could even go back and look at the late 80s. Right here, not enough money to fund 2 school systems. So when the state is trying to fund public schools and private schools, and when those private schools in some cases are going to be getting more money than public schools in some of those counties, I think as representatives who were elected very specifically to care for our public schools, it's incumbent on us to make sure that we tell our legislators that this is not in the best interest of our students. Thank you.
Mr. Triplett.
Yeah,
We can't hear other board members. Thank you.
I appreciate you bringing this resolution, and I know that we had this as a legislative priority a couple of years ago, and then as this board actually voted to remove that, opposing vouchers off of that legislative priority list, this same board, I don't know that opinion has changed, or if folks on this board, that opinion has changed. I think we have a responsibility as board members, of course, to assist Dr. Weiswick and his team and have the best schools in Knox County we possibly can, and the ability to compete locally and beyond. And I think Dr. Weiswick's doing a great job, and we've seen some improvement, and obviously desire to see more. And I know that's his goal. We have some wonderful teachers and staff and administrators in Knox County. And so I think we ought to do our best to make this system the very best it can possibly be. I would argue that I think it would be somewhat arrogant to think that this system could meet the need of every student and every child in Knox County. And so I will be against this resolution. And I feel that this gives parents the opportunity in various situations. I'm blessed with great schools in our community, and I appreciate them and appreciate our folks, and I know the rest of you do as well. But there are situations where I think there are better options than what we can provide, and I think this gives parents a choice and to do what they think is best for their child. So, my vote is not really necessarily is really for the student and for the parents who feel like this would be a better option for them. And so I'd like to see very comfortable supporting vouchers, and I think we've got a great enough school to compete against that. But I also understand that not every parent feels the same, and so this provides them an opportunity to get a good education for their kid or some services that they need, and so I will oppose this resolution on Thursday.
Can we keep the talking down, please? Some board members are having a hard time hearing others. Thank you. I agree with Mr. Triplett. I will also not be supporting this resolution, and I do support the governor's initiative for an ESA program. I think, to me, school choice is about competition. I think that's what our country's built on. I think competition raises everyone up so that everyone is successful. I think parents know what's best for their children, and I do agree that we've seen gains in our school system. I think that we've done a good job with student outcomes and focusing on our 4 priorities. But with that said, maybe the school system isn't the best choice for every child. And I think that every child should have those opportunities. Every child should have those choices, and every parent should as well. So I'll also be voting no against this resolution. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Anderson, I appreciate that you mentioned the word competition. That was an argument that was made to me over 4 years ago when I decided to run for the board. Actually, one of the people that helped encourage me to run for the board, we are very in different places. We're in very different places regarding the vouchers, and we had a lot of good conversation. And one of the things he said, the same thing, hey, it's about competition. Everybody gets better, right? Here's what we forget about competition. In competition, there's always losers. That's the nature of competition. That works great in capitalism, like when you're deciding which clothing brand to go for and who makes the best chicken sandwich, and all that kind of stuff. That's really good, but what we don't want to do when it comes to anything that's designed for the social good is by the system we're creating winners and losers. That's what we don't want to do. And that's, to me, the problem with that language when it comes to competition, when it comes to dealing with our kids. I don't want to create a system that creates more competition, because here's what's going to happen with a voucher program. You cannot sustain a voucher program to where it addresses every kid. You can't do that. It's way too much cost. Right now, on average, our kids in Knox County will get $2,000 less per pupil than a kid getting a voucher, right? So if you just talk about that, you can't do that. So what you've done is you pulled out some people from the current system, and you're creating a system that, yes, some may get a better chance. And I hear you, Mr. Triplett, like individual parents, like that's what I want. But what you've done probably intentionally is you then harm the system that's going to still, by and large, affect the greatest number of kids, right? Think about what happened with our incarceration system. The moment competition was introduced to it, and now you could have private actors within incarceration systems. We have a huge mass incarceration system in our country because we wanted more competition. We wanted to encourage that. To me, competition is great when we're talking about Walmart and Target, but it's not great when we're talking about anything that's designed for the social good. Whenever we're talking about something that's designed for the social good, there should be not competition. We should design systems that work for the flourishing of all people. And I think the problem with the voucher system is not the pure motivation. I think it's pure, the pure motivation of, hey, I want to give Johnny a chance, right? Like I get that. The problem is you can't give all the Johnnies and Susies the chance using that system. So as you siphon things out of the other system, you actually harm way more kids. Now, you're not going to do it, there's a tipping point. You're not going to do it with ESSA 1.0 or 2.0, right? The amount of volume that we were talking about during the governor's first initial action and plan. But if that's the trend, if that's where we go with public education, then there's going to be a tipping point. And there's going to be a tipping point where there is more harm done than good. Unless you can create a system where everybody gets the chance to do the voucher thing. I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can make it sustainable. So to me, that's my biggest concern about it is, yes, I hear us talking about the individual kids, and that's great. But we as board members, we're not making decisions about individual kids. I've not been asked or elected to make a decision for Johnny or JPQ who lives at 1300 Avenue. I've been elected to help nurture a system that creates flourishing for the most kids. And that's my problem with the vouchers, and I'm getting a little passionate about it, and I wasn't planning on doing it. But I think it's important for us to not only dig into this issue as vouchers, but dig into the issue of introducing competition historically in our country when it deals with things that are designed for the social good. I promise you, if you do that, you will never find a system that went private and introduced competition that was designed for the social good where more people won than lost. You won't. You won't find that. And so if we make the same mistake with our education system, that's where the problem is. It's not about the individual kid in this, and that's not what we've been elected to address. We've been elected to help nurture a public education system where there's flourishing for the most kids, and that's the problem with it.
Ms. Spike.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a person who has done sports nearly all of their life and loves competition, I like the idea of competition, but also being someone that mentors young girls from age 7 to 13 in mountain biking. And if you watch, no matter what, even though there's a scholarship version, I would not put the girls who already have a leg up, who have nice mountain bikes, who have all of the things, who have two parents that do everything for them and have the funds and the means and the time, versus the girls who may not have two parents or have a different guardian situation, have a donated bike that is 10 years old, and just don't even know how to pedal forward. I would not put them against each other, and I think that that's kind of what this does. And realistically, I think also what I would like to ask for is a more robust plan. If the state is going to move forward with vouchers, I want to see something that's proven to actually work to serve all children. I don't expect Knox County Schools to be able to perfectly serve all students, but I think it's important to understand what our purpose is and not be funneling money to a different place and fostering kind of generally unfair competition. So I would be in support of moving forward with this and this conversation.
Thank you. I just think that right now, the way that it is, only those with the means are able to have choice for their kids. So if I live in a certain zip code or I can afford certain things for my child, those people have choice. Other people may be stuck, and they deserve just as much choice as those in richer zip codes. And going back to funding, in 2021 to the current year, so in a 3-year, in 3 years, we've seen over $160 million more come into the school system in those last 3 years. So the fact that money's being taken out of public schools, I think, is a scare tactic. We see, and that's not even including federal funds.
Ms. Henderson?
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I can't, I'm getting a lot of side noise here. And
Okay, thank you, Ms.
really
Christie.
focus.
If we can't keep the noise down, I will have the officers ask some people to leave if you have an issue. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Christie. And again, we also don't have a full board. So to bring this major policy to a partial board, I'm also in disagreement with as well. Thank you. Anyone else? Discussion? Okay. Well, moving on to item D. Any discussion on item D? Okay. Mr. Triplett, I think we have a few public forum
We do.
speakers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sarah Bateman. Sarah, if you'll state your name and county of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm Sarah Bateman. I teach English as a second language at Bearden High School, and I live in Knox County. I am here tonight to ask for aid for our English Language Learners Program. I was encouraged to hear the report on the Newcomer Academy this evening, but I still have concerns for students in our schools now. As I'm sure you are all aware, the KCS Welcome Center enrolled nearly 1,000 students since last August. Unfortunately, many of these students have faced numerous barriers to their education, which makes it difficult for them to keep up with their peers. How can we expect a student to launch into high school chemistry after witnessing his mother die in a car bomb in Iraq, fleeing to Turkey, where he didn't speak the language, and missing years of education before moving to the U.S.? He was never even taught how to read in his own language. How are teachers supposed to make accommodations for him? Giving him a dictionary and extra time, the state's accepted accommodations, will not be enough if he struggles to read the material in the first place. Or what about my student from Ukraine, who became unusually silent after she was sent a message that the building she grew up in had just been destroyed? How is she supposed to focus on the state's curriculum when she is being bombarded with photos of her hometown being razed to the ground? The recent switch to TN Pulse as a way of implementing accommodations for SPED 504 and EL students has further complicated matters. The switch has been an utter disaster, leading to nothing but time wasted when we could have been supporting our students and general education teachers. Multiple high school ESL teachers in Knox County have told me they have already put in 30 to 40 hours outside of contracted time. Of course, I recognize that this board is not responsible for state decisions, and I thank the county for re-implementing our old elevation program for the monitoring forms. I am also very grateful for the support from our KCS EL department, especially our coaches. But as you consider next year's budget, I have some suggestions for how to support EL students. First, seek to hire more teachers. My colleague who teaches biology to 35 students cannot be expected to give much personal attention to the 4 ELs in her class, most of whom come with limited science and math skills. Second, if the state continues to use TN Pulse, please consider giving all EL teachers at least 2 days of professional leave to get our ILPs completed while not losing focus on our students. Third, hire more staff for the Welcome Center. I have no idea how they managed to enroll so many new students this year, but I'm sure they could use the help. Fourth, hire more counselors and mental health professionals. The Helen Ross McNabb counselor we have at Bearden can see 35 students, meaning I have never been able to schedule a single one of my students to see her. I am not trained to know how to respond when a student stays after class to tell me in tears how she's still having nightmares about the detention center, where she was always cold and where she was not allowed to hug or even touch the other children with her. All I can do is listen and offer her a space to cry and express her anger. Fifth, come and meet my students. After you hear their stories, I'm sure you will understand more about why I'm asking you to plead with the state to take a more compassionate attitude towards them. Please remember my students as you consider next year's budget.
Thank you, Sarah. Tim Buss.
Would it be possible to increase the volume slightly?
I guess my understanding is we get some feedback, but I think they'll do their best to get it as the volume they can.
Yeah, so it's as loud as it will go. Maybe, if you want to speak a little bit more into the microphone, or maybe that's the only thing I can think of to do.
How's this? Is this any better?
It's perfect.
I know
Okay.
you're a little tall for that microphone,
Yeah,
Mr.
I am,
Buss.
but-
I apologize. The podium does move up and down, though. Yep.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
I
that's
have this
awesome.
same problem, except I
love
always
it.
have to lower it, so.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
this-
Sorry
this
about all
moves
the.
here. No, okay, how's that? All right. Okay, so I know the drill. My name is Tim Buss. I am a Knox County resident, a parent of 2 KCS students, and a substitute teacher in the school system. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of Board Member Owen's resolution opposing private school vouchers. I've listened to some of the opposition, and I appreciate that, and I'm always a firm believer in listening to other people's viewpoints. I do see this situation of funding as kind of a zero-sum game, I'm sorry. I don't really trust, or it just doesn't feel right to me that the state authorities say, well, it's not technically coming out of public education. I think that, Board Member Owen really expressed it better than I can about the funding formulas, so I'm going to stop there and just kind of make the simple statement is, I believe it is a zero-sum game. So what we take from, what we give to private school vouchers, we are taking away from the schools. You can agree with it or not, that's my position, okay? Just a couple weeks ago, we were here talking about the teacher shortage and the below average pay for this area, despite all the additional money coming in from ESSER and the additional millions of dollars. Overwhelmingly, the feedback that we received in our listening session said that we need more teachers and we need better pay, okay? As a taxpayer, a parent, and a KCS substitute teacher, I strongly object to any public money going towards private school vouchers. The money will go, it comes, again, my position is it's coming, it might not be dollar for dollar, but it's coming out of our public schools. And it's going to institutions that may be great, but they're not really accountable to the public. There are, I think, 90,000 plus students in Knox County schools who need more money in our schools, for more teachers, for better pay, for better retention of teachers. As the KCS board, I don't see how you could possibly not come out publicly against this resolution. I don't know if I could say it any better than Mr. Watson said it. You guys, this board was elected to take care of Knox County schools, okay, and to build a better school system, not to take a position that would go against Knox County schools, which I believe this would. And really, that's all I have to say. I appreciate your time. With my last 15 seconds, I would like to support Ms. Bateman's comments. I have substitute taught in ELL classes in Knox County schools, and the needs there are extremely great. They're extremely great needs in those classes. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Paula Hancock.
After you all raise it up?
I know. We're trying to make it difficult, right?
I don't know. Yes. Tell you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Superintendent Riswick. Well, here we are. The General Assembly has reconvened, and the hot topics in Nashville include school safety. Legislators will decide in ways to keep students, educators, and schools safe from threats of violence. Education savings accounts. Legislators will be deciding whether to expand the voucher program statewide, diverting funds from public schools to unaccountable private entities. Third grade retention again, and starting this year, fourth graders will be impacted by retention requirements set in state law. Curriculum and books. Additional legislation has already been filed that will further impact educators' ability to teach state standards with fidelity and without fear. School accountability. Some legislators recognize that a single letter grade cannot accurately reflect the complex work that happens in schools. And there is so much more. Communities, including our educators, must be a part of influencing all decisions that impact our students, educators, and families. The educators in Knox County schools are and remain committed to partnering with our district leaders, school board members, and families to advocate for the resources, policies, and laws that will ensure the Knox County schools is the best place in which to live, teach, and learn. As we all follow the happenings in Nashville, I am asking, as your recognized collaborative conferencing partner, that you please commit to having discussions with the Knox County Education Association about how legislation considered in Nashville will realistically and directly impact our school district. Let's talk about the facts. The facts that some are saying that there's no link between vouchers and gains in student achievement. The fact that vouchers undermine accountability for public funds. The fact that vouchers do not reduce public education costs. And the facts that vouchers do not give parents real educational choice. The fact, perhaps, that the bottom line is public funds intended for public schools are for public schools, and we support fully funding public schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Carrie Anton? Carrie? If you'll state your name and county of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is Kari Anton. I'm a resident of Knox County. My children go to Knox County schools. I actually have a very unique perspective on the voucher system. I grew up in Michigan. I was a student at Detroit Public Schools when they were introducing the voucher system into Michigan schools, spearheaded by Betsy DeVos. I'm not a fan. The voucher system is not new. It was the brainchild of segregationists who introduced it after Brown v. Board of Education was the decision from the Supreme Court. Educational vouchers are basically not school savings accounts. And $7,000 will not cover the cost of tuition at most private schools, as any parent of children who go to private schools knows. As written, this new bill would open these vouchers up to the entire state. So Michigan Charter School Issues was basically a free market system, and it became open market for investors as they came in. These schools were basically open to financial shareholders, and they treated them like real estate investments. And it completely deregulated the schools in Michigan, resulting in a forest of bad choices for most parents. They were sold as a promise that never delivered. The Brookings Institute analysis done in 2017 ranked Michigan among the bottom 20% of schools when previously Michigan had been in the median range of schools, which was a significant drop, needless to say. 2016 analysis by the Educational Trust of the Midwest, a nonpartisan policy research group, found 70% of Michigan charter schools were in the bottom half of the state schools rankings. And Tennessee already struggles in some of the criteria for key student achievement. I don't think we're going to drop any further. This idea is always marketed as school choice or parent choice, but it's really a business model. Most schools are run by educational management organizations from around the country. Because state funds are following the students, not going to the parents, they become commodities, just numbers on a balance sheet instead of small people to educate. In little more than a decade, Michigan went from, as I said, being near average to near the bottom 10 ranked in the nation. This is information from a New York Times article printed in 2017. Also from 2017, in a Thomas B. Fordham Institute, funded by the Walton Family Foundation, focused on a large voucher program in Ohio, their findings noticed that voucher students fared significantly worse than their public school peers academically, especially in math. Another thing the charter school education foundations love to do, such as the National Heritage Academies, one of the largest charter school groups in the country, which is also linked to Hillsdale College, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, our governor is friends with. I know what the time is, thank you very much. They love to sell off the properties that their schools are leased to. Some of them are leased at $1 million a year.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have a very particular interest in this. I have a very also...
Thank you, ma'am.
The loss of funds will only widen the growing achievement gap that concerns myself included. What good is a massive state budget surplus?
Ma'am, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Everybody gets 3 minutes. Officers, please. Thank you.
Michael O'Malley. Michael, if you'll state your name and county of residence, you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Michael O'Malley. I live in Knox County. I'm also a parent of a KCS student. I'm also a teacher at Carter High School, and I'm also here to support Ms. Owen's resolution. I just think vouchers will harm our staff and students, and that the board needs to be clear about that. There's a lot of critiques about how vouchers will negatively affect state finances or school accountability, or to Ms. Bike's point, disability rights, and other education adjacent issues. And those are fairly well publicized, so I won't touch them. But maybe because I'm a teacher, one of the concerns foremost in my mind is how putting vouchers into Knox County would affect staffing in Knox County schools, and my school specifically. We all know that vouchers will result in at least a few students leaving our public schools for other options, because that's the choice that they're being given, right? The choice to not go to public schools, which is, of course, a parent's choice. But as someone who would be remaining in that system, I think a lot about what that would look like for those of us who are still there, since a good chunk of how the state and county allocate resources is determined by student enrollment. We're looking at least some of our schools losing staffing over this. And I think a lot about the schools like the one where I teach, schools whose smaller populations have already put them on the line for staff reductions fairly frequently, even without the downward enrollment pressure of vouchers. And when you're in the middle of it, those staffing reductions don't feel good, and they don't feel proportionate to whatever decrease in enrollment that you had. Suddenly you lose a whole secretarial position, or a whole counselor, or you have 6 English teachers when just last year you had 7, or the electives or AP classes that enrich students one year will disappear the next. These are things that have already happened in schools without vouchers affecting enrollment. And don't hear me say that we aren't still good schools, because we are, and we work hard to give our students as rich an educational experience as any other school. But the reality of what staffing reductions leave behind is an environment where people have to do more with less. And that's not fair to our staff, and especially not to our students, who I think also deserve the choice to be in publicly funded schools that reached all of their needs as they were previously, rather than whatever arbitrary new benchmark that we expect under vouchers. And especially as our high schools roll out these highly publicized 865 academies, which I know we all want to go very well, given all of the publicity and the hopes and investment in them. If they're to work with integrity, we need more staffing and not less. The very goals that we as a district say that we are working toward involve adequately staffing our schools with professionals who can follow through on the goals that we've set for us, and vouchers would make our ability to do that precarious, especially for already smaller schools. I realize that Knox County Schools doesn't actually have a say in this, since this is a state level decision, but when several legislators who will eventually vote on the voucher bill, and some of which are still on the fence, according to their emails that...
Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. Thank you. Time is up. Thank you, sir. Aaron Keck. Aaron, if you'll state your name and county of residence, you'll have 3 minutes.
Aaron Keck, Knox County. Is that better? I mean, I just need to be heard, that's all. Thank you. I am here speaking tonight to support Jennifer Owens' resolution. This is the public school board. You are all elected by the people in your various districts to support public schools. If you take away money from public schools to give them to private schools, that is not supporting public schools. I heard Dr. Reiswick talk about how happy he's been in his reflection this evening about these foundational skills that are being improved and school culture that we've been working on. Shout out to Janice Cook for her hard work. And the pillar that sticks out tonight is the success for all students. With 865 Academy and the presentation we heard about the Newcomers Academy, these things need funding. Knox County does not have enough money to pay our custodians. We don't have enough because we can't pay them. We don't have enough support staff. We argue about having the proper transportation to take children that might need help in their summer reading programs to and from their home to the building. We don't have funds to properly maintain our buildings or our playgrounds in our schools. And there's been a lot of praise for the intentionality that went on with the planning at the Paul Kelly Academy. There's been complaints about the use of portables in buildings and causing the need for additional renovations. All of these things cost money. How can we possibly allocate a dime of the funds that should be going to our public schools to private school vouchers? I think it is incredibly naive to think that a voucher for a family that couldn't otherwise afford a private school will now all of a sudden enable that family to afford a private school. That shows that some people are very out of touch with how people in this county are living. I would argue that this country is not founded on competition, but on democracy. And a core tenet of the founding fathers was public education for everyone, for all children. Success for all students in Knox County School is just words if you're not going to back it up. Please support Ms. Owens' resolution. Please support Knox County Schools, or maybe think of a different place to come and spend your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Sherry Garrett. Sherry, if you'll state your name and county of residence, you'll have 3 minutes.
I am a little vertically challenged. My name is Sherry Garrett, and I live in Knox County. The resolution opposing Governor Lee's Education Freedom Act attempts to deflect blame away from Knox County schools for its inability to provide adequate education to students. School choice is a reaction to the policies and programs of the Board of Education Administration, not teachers or Governor Lee. Many of you are responsible for the appeal of school choice. In 2020, you not only supported school closures, online learning, and masks, you reveled in it. You wielded power over families like a controlling HOA president denying a mailbox to a homeowner. Your ability to force kids to wear masks, scold parents as COVID deniers, and isolate children from their friends would have lasted 1/10 as long with fewer mental health issues and education loss if school choice were an option. Why does the Knox County Board of Education need to express its opposition to the Educational Freedom Act? And by the way, the Educational Freedom Act does not include vouchers. It is educational savings accounts, or scholarships, I think Governor Lee likes to call it. So the current resolution is not accurate in its claims. The resolution makes quite the claim that educational savings accounts threaten the district's ability to maintain quality of its educational offerings. In reality, 21 Knox County schools received a D rating. 4 received an F rating. District-wide, 41% of students are proficient in ELA, 33.9% are proficient in math. It's like saying that a car that only starts 41% of the time is a quality automobile. If a resolution is necessary, it should address how the BOE can cut excess managerial staff from the budget and eliminate DEI, SEL, and other costly, ineffective programs and use those funds to increase salaries for teachers and support staff. Instead, the resolution is more concerned about this Board of Education losing local control over its schools and how ESAs would divert funding and disrupt local control of education. It might also admit that restorative practices like minutes of silence, reflection chairs, class trips to the bathroom, and circling up to toss balls to each other, taking up half of every class period, would be better spent teaching students to read. By the way, kicking a disruptive kid out of class takes less than 5 minutes, and the teacher won't have to spend extra money on a chair. These and many other examples of why parents favor school choice. The Board of Education should resolve to make the changes necessary to educate students so parents won't need school choice. And lastly, Ms. Owen, your comment about the transparency and the caption bills, I wholeheartedly agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Sherry Super. Chair, if you'll state your name and county residence, you have 3 minutes.
Sherry Super, Knox County. Why does parents having a choice on where their kids go to school cause so much pontificating and pearl clutching? We heard about segregation, discrimination against kids with 2 parents and new bikes, and how you weren't elected to look out for little Johnny, and then a dramatic outburst at the end. It's bananas. This is not about public schools. This is about the student being raised by a single mom in a failing inner city school who has no options, having an opportunity to attend a private school and changing his life forever. It's about the straight-A student at that same failing school getting a chance to access specialized curriculum at a private school that helps her earn a scholarship to Harvard and maybe eventually a nomination to the Supreme Court. It's about a little girl at Farragut High School who doesn't fit in. She sits alone at lunch. She can barely make it through the day because she feels so lonely. What if attending a private school with new peers restores her soul? You know, we talk a lot about the least of these, right up until the point where we might actually be able to help them. This is not a slap in the face to public schools. Public schools are, for the majority of kids, wonderful. But not every child is going to be okay in a public school. I don't know how the state's going to decide to do the funding. I don't know if it's going to work or if it's not going to work. But if you care about kids, really, shouldn't the focus be on what's best for them? Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Madam Chair, that concludes public forum.
Thank you, Mr. Triplett. We'll move on to board forum. Celeste.
I would just like to congratulate the Bearden High School dance team who competed at nationals this week and won in the 2024 Large Varsity Palm National Champions. And then in the words of one of the seniors on the dance team, our theme was Cha-Cha Slide, and we Cha-Cha slid to first place.
I love that. That's awesome. Reverend Butler, Ms. Owen, Mr. Watson, Mr. Triplett.
I don't think I can top that.
I know. Ms. Spike.
Thank you. I just want to circle back on a couple things really quickly. I think we've all heard about how many children are in DHS and wards of the state. We absolutely know that we have children who are houseless in Knox County, and Knox County Schools serves those students. Those students didn't have a choice to be in that situation, and I'd really like to see more intention be put in that direction. I absolutely understand, especially as a single mom previously, or continuing, how hard it can be to raise kids and do the best for them and not have the money to do what you would like to do with them. I would love to see some more intentionality towards that direction. Thank you.
Ms. Horn. Ms. Christie. Okay. Well, with that, we are adjourned. We'll see everybody Thursday evening.